Scream for me, NOTCASTers! I said Iron Maiden. So, this is Mark's NOTCAST. If you haven't seen one before, it's a middle-aged to slightly older dude with no hair in his back room talking to his mobile phone about records he likes, loves, or simply owns. And today I am talking about Iron Maiden and their fifth studio record, released in 1984. Powerslave, and recorded 40 years ago this month, in fact last week, 40 years ago last week, Iron Maiden's live album, Live After Death, the record that launched 1 million air guitars and cost me a lot of money. Well, I say it cost me a lot of money. It cost me a lot of money because I saw it and I thought, this band are bloody brilliant. I think I might buy some of their records. Well, more correctly, although they tell you that home taping kills music, that's bullshit, because without home taping I wouldn't have grown to love Iron Maiden. Between me and my brother, we had one really good record collection. I veered more towards synth pop, he veered more towards hair metal before he got no hair like I got no hair, and then it became no hair metal. Hang on, that didn't make sense. Also, kids at my school, Clemmy, Smithy, Dennis, Paul, yeah, I hope you guys are doing all right. I bet you're not watching this, and I bet you didn't think that 40 years from when we were in our respective teenage bedrooms taping each other copies of Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses and Megadeth albums, I would be talking on a thing called the internet, last seen in War Games, about copies of these records and showing copies of these records which I bought at the time. Because, of course, I bet nobody thought that I didn't even think we'd get to the year 2025. I thought we'd all vanish in a puff of smoke on the 1st of January 2000. Or there'd be some form of alien invasion, let alone the actual weird kind of stuff that's going on right now in the world. So, with that in mind, we start off with Iron Maiden, and I talk about this album, that live album, the singles, and all the stuff that goes with it. But I also have to show you, because remember, I'm an enthusiast, not an expert, that since this isn't an academic treatise, despite the webpage saying everything I learned about world history I learned from Iron Maiden, I have 3 core source texts which I've also referred to. This, the Run to the Hills, the 3rd edition by Mick Wall, in the days when Iron Maiden were big enough to have massive books about their history. I have read every page of this more than once. This, Bruce Dickinson's What Does This Button Do? The less than satisfying autobiography of Sir Bruce Dickinson, in which he has absolutely no private life whatsoever. And perhaps most laughably of all, this, Iron Maiden's Running Free, the book by Gary Bushell, the book that is entirely conducted in Cockney slang and patois. For example, so the last paragraph, which by the way comes to the end of the Peace of Mind tour. Well, actually, no, it doesn't, because there's an extra epilogue, chapter 7, The Slaves' Revolt, a temporary conclusion, which details the Powerslave era. And so that you know the level of intellectual rigour that I'm dealing with this particular text, let's just go for the last paragraph. You better believe it. It's their ability to weave rock dreams for millions and yet still stay in touch with their roots that makes Iron Maiden so much more special than half the stuck-up twerps who pass for rock and pop stars these days. It's also what guarantees they're going to be around for a long time, as long as they never, ever let Bruce Dickinson drive a tour bus. That is the level of intellectual vigour and rigour that we have in this book. So it's fair to say I don't pay a huge amount of attention to this, because it's quite light on the group account, and it's not particularly good. So, Iron Maiden's Powerslave, what is it about? Well, it's about 50 minutes long. It's about 2 slides of vinyl. It's about 41 years old. It's just been reissued in yet another pointless Zeotrope picture disc for those of you that have got too much money and not enough space. That absolutely need to have every single format of every single Iron Maiden release whatsoever. I am not one of those people. For me, I buy music for the music. I know I've got some coloured vinyl editions. I know I've got some rare stuff out there. But if the music didn't mean anything to me, I wouldn't do it. Which means if I buy a single, I'll buy it for the B-sides. I don't buy it because of the A-sides, which is why it took me a long time to get the Guns N' Roses singles. Because the B-sides of the Guns N' Roses singles were album tracks already owned on Appetite for Destruction, just pressed at 45 RPM. What's the point of that? I know what Mr. Brownstone sounds like. I know what It's So Easy sounds like. I know what Rocket Queen sounds like. At a certain point, in around about 1989, I probably could have done a note-for-note perfect recreation of every single at the end of Rocket Queen, because I'd listened to Appetite for Destruction so many times. So for me, it was all about the music. Is Powerslave any good? Yes and no. It isn't. Like all Iron Maiden albums, it is not about anything, and it's about everything at the same time. It is also about every single book or film or documentary about war that the band watched on their tour bus. If you listen to this album and you go for the lyrics, you have this understanding that actually the band have no personal lives whatsoever. They've never even so much as kissed a girl, although they've definitely killed a woman. Actually, no, they've never killed a woman before, but they know how it feels. That they've never actually, kissed a woman. They've never had families, children, relatives, jobs. They've never bought chocolate from a newsagent's, because all they've ever done is do nothing but 24/7 watch old VHS tapes on the tour bus of World War II films and Egyptian epics. Hence Powerslave, or as I prefer to think of it, as Ben-Hur the musical. This is an album that is absolutely obsessed with power. It's oddly enough, that's why it's called Powerslave. All the imagery is linked to, obviously, Egyptians, pharaohs, sphinxes, pyramids, that kind of thing. The idea of ancient civilizations that have fallen into nothingness, presumably because an episode of BBC's World in Action, or possibly James Burke's Connections, talked about how pyramids were built at one upon a time using these weird and unusual pulleys and things, and so therefore the band felt it important to do that. Alongside, by the look of it, Adrian Smith is bucking the trend there, because it's the band have got a fierce vests rule, apart from Adrian Smith, who's wearing just a jacket and no t-shirt at all. Well. Right. With all of that aside, let's talk about how Iron Maiden have absolutely no personal life whatsoever, but a fantastic selection of history documentaries. The first single that was released from the album was, I believe, Aces High. I could be wrong, on the grounds that it doesn't really matter. But this was released first, I believe, or it might have been Aces High. No, actually, it was Aces High. And Aces High was, by the way, the third Iron Maiden lead single from an album that was about war. Following on from The Trooper and Flight of the Icarus, and also Run to the Hills. So yet another song about war. And Aces High also revisits, or more correctly sets out, the themes that are revisited later on in things like Afraid to Shoot Strangers and Tail Gunner, which is about, it's terrible to have to kill people. Obviously it is, although they've never killed a woman before, but they know how it feels. They've clearly killed lots of people in the line of duty. This was obviously about the second. It's a banger, by the way. Aces High opened the 2018 to 2019 Legacy of the Beast tour, which I saw in London at the O2 Arena, with, by the way, a 90% scale model of a Spitfire with an inaccurate registration plate, which was never actually used. So when they sold you the Airfix version of the Spitfire relatively recently, it had the wrong number on, and that for some people is a deal breaker. You might as well go on the Internet Movie Gun database to talk about how the version of the AK-47 that they used in Rambo 2 was inaccurate, because it's got 3 notches above the barrel, not 2, and 2 was the combat accurate version that they used in the year in which the film was meant to be made. Whereas I'm sat there kind of going, oh, it's just a dude with muscles shooting people. Get a grip. Every band has a visionary, a leader, someone who's obsessed with taking the band forward, in the way that every super successful business, every creative entity, there is somebody that normally takes the lead in an environment and goes, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. Obviously in Metallica it's Lars Ulrich, in Iron Maiden it's Steve Harris, and he took his one shot and he drove it all the way to the moon and back. Bruce became the second front man of the band when he joined, Steve becoming the main front man, and so therefore between the two of them they were driven with ambition. Sometimes I think when I watch or read this, Bruce talks about how he thought that Paul was like, it's a great band but they've got the wrong singer, and then he's kind of going, yeah, and I need to be the singer. In the same fashion, Steve looked at the potential that there was in Iron Maiden and thought, I can make this thing happen, and made it happen. If Steve Harris leaves Iron Maiden, there is no Iron Maiden, is there? I mean, you look at the writing credits on this album alone, and he writes Aces High, he writes The Duelists, he writes. Actually, not quite Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a mere 13 minutes 45 seconds. And also, I believe, let me just quickly check. Oh, not as much else. And Lost for Words, which of course is an instrumental, the first instrumental to be released since Bruce joined the band. Is it any good? Yes. Is it just another Iron Maiden album? Absolutely. Is it a fantastic piece of prog metal? Undoubtedly. Is it a great album? Maybe not, but it's bloody good fun. And it has the typical musical things that you would expect from Iron Maiden. So shifting tempos, galloping dunga 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 dung dung bass, this frenetic drumming, and dueling guitars that often double each other and create this thick wall of sound. On top of that was Bruce's air raid siren vocal. So he was called Air Raid, and so therefore, of course, in Aces High, there's a line that goes there goes the siren that warns of the air raid. It's like Bruce going, hello, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I'm the power slave. I'm a slave to the power of death. All right, maybe not. There was a balance in the band at around about this time. The band recorded in Compass Point in Hawaii, which I think was the same place that they recorded Peace of Mind. This album sold 1 million copies in America. If you sold 1 million copies of an album in America these days, everyone would be astounded, and you'd probably be paying stadiums to the end of time. This one, it was just like, oh, only 1 million? You can do 1.5 million next time. Well, that's the next episode. And there was a balance, I think, in the band as well. And there was a balance between EMI and the band. So the EMI had started to look at the band and went, you guys are going to sell 1 million copies out of the gate when you play America and you tour. You are going to make us loads of money, tons of money, and you're going to tour and tour and tour. And I think this tour had, and I need to correct something, 189 shows in 28 countries over 13 months. And the band actually told Rod to stop because they were just going mad. They toured to the ends of the universe and they just couldn't carry on any longer. But EMI saw this and they go, we're going to milk these cash cows. You know, they were operating at a speed and a pace you can't do anymore when you're young. When you're old and clever, you can do it when you're young and stupid. You certainly can't do it when you're old and stupid. Bruce wanted to move beyond horror movie lyrics. He was fed up of writing songs about, monsters, vampires, things coming out of the fog and eating you alive, Cthulhu and all of that type of stuff. But he still didn't want to talk about personal. Absolutely didn't want to talk about personal things. So the songs which he's written on the album, specifically 2 Minutes to Midnight, Flash of the Blade, elements of Back in the Village, which is about the prisoner, of course, and Powerslave. Those are songs where the lyrics are similes. They're allegories to things in real life. So all of the songs on the album deal with the dichotomy of power seen through the prism of history. That sounds very much like I should be in Sue's corner in Melody Maker. That's not true. It's just all these songs is Iron Maiden are being personal, but they're writing about things that they can see. Aces High is about war and the military-industrial complex. 2 Minutes to Midnight is, again, it's about war in the military-industrial complex. Lost for Words, Big Horror, that's about nothing, because it's an instrumental. We have Flash of the Blade, which is about fencing, and we have Duelists, Flash of the Blade is also around like the mythology of Saint George and the dragon, someone slaying a dragon and taking their ambitions and not listening to what they've been told they can achieve, but achieving something else. The Duelist is, of course, inspired by the 1977 film by Ridley Scott, who later went on to make films you might have heard of, such as 1492 Conquest of Paradise, Blade Runner, and Alien. Oh, and G.I. Jane. So, a top-notch filmmaker there. Apparently, on the set of Robin Hood, I think it was Robin Hood, or was it, there was a 2010 film, not Robin Hood, there was another film, wasn't he, made around 2010 that was about something, and he was on a beach standing in for Dungeness, and he said, why am I making this shit? Well, Ridley, I don't know, and I can't even remember because it's that bad. Nonetheless, if you're going to commit a year of your life to something, it has to be something you believe in and something that you feel can translate to telling something about your own life, which Powerslave, oddly enough, despite it's all about Egyptians and war and death and fencing and war, if I mentioned war, it's about war as well, is something that the band felt about. The Duelists It's about fencing, inspired by the Ridley Scott film. But then on side 2, you go Back in the Village, and Back in the Village revisits the themes from The Prisoner, which was obviously the song on 1982's Number of the Beast, another song about a prisoner, but obviously the idea about concepts of control, repetition, being stuck in an environment that repeats itself. You can watch The Prisoner and think, it's just like being on a tour bus. You know, when you get on the tour bus and you walk too far away from the venue, a big white balloon is going to come from nowhere and kind of crush you and drag you back into the village, for example. That's how it felt. Track 7 is Powerslave, which is about the immortal ambitions of an Egyptian emperor. Casual stuff, we can all relate to that, can't we? Certainly me as a 13-year-old listening to this for the first time. Of course I know what it's like to not want to die and want to become an emperor and to conquer mortality. Why not? Yes, obviously, spoke deeply to me lyrically at that point. And then finally, track 8, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which at 14 minutes long, it was the longest Iron Maiden song recorded until Empire of the Clouds was released in 2015. By the way, which was Bruce Dickinson and Dave Murray's favourite song to play on the 2008-2009 tour, in case you thought Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But again, totally written 100% by Harris and being enormously, enormously long indeed. And it's a great album. And it sounds like I've rubbished it. I haven't. I love it to bits. But is it any good? Yes. But does it mean anything to me? I could go decades without hearing this because every note of it has been imprinted upon my soul from me listening to it as a teenager, and me kind of going, when I first discovered that, you know, you could actually talk to girls and go out and have relationships with people and stuff, I kind of went, it's a bit juvenile, isn't it? I certainly would never have played it to my girlfriend in the 90s and went, oh, this band's are really good. They'd have been like, no, they're not. They're stupid. They're singing about, you know, Egyptians and haunted ships and leprosy and war. And kind of go, yeah, you have got a point, isn't it? They're not quite as good as some other bands. But this is a huge part of who I am and how I've become me is Iron Maiden. Yes, that's true. Because I still wear all the band t-shirts. In fact, it's a rare NOTCAST I don't have an appropriate band t-shirt on. It's also a rare NOTCAST I don't kind of mouth off my opinion about something. First single, Aces High, by the way, is backed with a cover of King of Twilight by a band called Nectar. I've never heard King of Twilight. These songs were mysteries to me when I was growing up. They were on 12-inch singles that my friends had that I couldn't afford to own. And yes, where is it? It's finally when I got the first 10 years box set CD that I was able to own all of these tracks and to find out what's the fuss with all the B-sides. Well, let us go, you and I, to Aces High and King of Twilight and 2 Minutes to Midnight on here. So it's backed with, so Aces High is backed with King of Twilight and a live version of Number of the Beast. Apparently, according to this, Aces of High was the second single. Obviously, I was 12 at the time, so I can't tell you for sure if that was the case. And the 2 Minutes to Midnight single is backed with one of the best live tracks ever, by the way, although not recorded in front of an audience, but we'll get to that in a minute, because 2 Minutes to Midnight is a fabulous little song. Adrian Smith says, I could knock stuff like that out all day. And you listen to it and kind of go, it's not very Iron Maiden, is it? It's very stadium rock, it's very big, it's huge. It's a little daft, undoubtedly, written by Smith and Dickinson. And by the way, I think the video for 2 Minutes to Midnight, some of the scenes were shot in the flat in which Bruce Dickinson used to live several years previously, until without him realising, they'd picked a derelict tower block flat to film it in, and lo and behold, it was the one that he used to live in. Well, that's a surprise for you, isn't it? But yeah, he could knock stuff out like this all day. Here it is. Yet another song about war and about, you know, the threat of impending nuclear destruction, which in 1984 was a really big deal. Threads had recently been on television. Two Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood had been #1 for approximately 7 years. We were all, war games and films about nuclear destruction were everywhere. I literally was just living in a state of near constant terror, where every minute I would think, Yeah, any second now, there's going to be some sirens and we're all going to be obliterated. And yeah, it's not far off what living now feels like, this world of 2 minutes to midnight. And bearing in mind, 2 minutes to midnight, the time was the hand that threatened doom. It was set on the nuclear clock to state the world's political situation. I think the safest the world has ever been was about 1996, when we were about 5 minutes away from midnight. The world is currently 90 seconds from midnight, which shows that the world is actually approximately 2.5 times more dangerous than it was 30 years ago. And that's a depressing thought, because I don't like that rate of acceleration, because it's an indication of showing how probable global thermonuclear war, to quote War Games, is from our minds and from our realities. And the answer is not far away enough, truth be told. B-sides of 2 minutes to midnight are Rainbow's Gold, a song by Slesser Mountain. I think that might be Jethro Tull. I'm not sure, but it might be. I think I've got a note somewhere that tells me about it. Rainbow's Gold by Budgie, I believe. And then Mission from Harry, one of my favourite Iron Maiden songs, primarily because it's a surreptitious recording of a backstage argument between Nico and Steve Harris, with Bruce Dickinson winding everybody up, talking about how Nico was tasked with doing an impromptu drum solo. Sadly, as Nico has retired from live performance, Mission from Harry will never be performed live. What a shame, actually, because it is one of the best B-sides ever. Some cunt is recording this, indeed. And you look at the tour dates that are on the back here, and you go, I made it in 1984, huge. No, they weren't. They could do the St David's Hall in Cardiff, capacity 1,700. The Victoria Hall in Hanley, not very big. The Royal Concert Hall in Nottingham, 2,000 people. They could play St Austell Coliseum, now demolished, capacity 1,800 people. The Oxford Apollo, 1,400 people. These were not big shows. Iron Maiden were a mid-level touring rock band that played 20-30 shows in the UK to about 2,000 people a night. Now they would headline the football stadium, the Hammers football stadium, which they're playing in June. Then they could play to a 30th of that audience. You know, the best they could do was 4 nights at Hammersmith Odeon. The 4 nights at Hammersmith Odeon that became side 4 of the vinyl edition of Live After Death, one of the finest live albums of all time. And Maiden were desperate to put out a live album. If nothing else, you play 189 shows and you've got nothing to show for it. But also, you need the world that hasn't been able to see you play live, hear you play live, realise how good you are. And this is where Bruce was really honest. That he said that he was basically flogging himself to death. He said, I was going to jack it in. It was the first time I thought about leaving music altogether. I was a basket case material. Nothing is worth feeling like this for. I began to feel like a piece of machinery, like I was part of the lighting rig, endlessly being nothing more than a piece of meat shuffled onto a bus and then shuffled onto a stage and told to sing for your supper for 90 minutes. And it was, you know, as Nico said, everyone but Steve and Bruce went nuts on tour. And Bruce went pretty close to going nuts. But the band just played too far, too long, too many times, too many miles. I mean, if I worked out the distance that the band had travelled, they could have probably, you know, driven to the moon and back on a 6-seater Arctic truck, which is a terrible place to be. So released in 1985, Iron Maiden's first live album, recorded at the Long Beach Arena on the 17th of March 1985 for the VHS, and over 2 nights for the LP, was released in a number of configurations. There are 3 different track listings for Live After Death, by the way. This is the one that most of you should know or have. It is the definitive double live album. 3 sides of the main set recorded live at Long Beach. Side 4 with songs that they didn't play at Long Beach recorded at Hammersmith Odeon. Those songs being Wrathchild, 22 Acacia Avenue, Children of the Damned, Die With Your Boots On, and Phantom of the Opera. All of which are great songs, but none of which were on the original single CD release of Live After Death, which, by the way, only has 1 CD in it, and runs all the way through from Aces High through to Running Free. And I think the ending of Running Free is edited on the CD in order to fit it onto CD into time, because CDs used to run up between 74 and 80 minutes. The recommendation was no more than 74 minutes. Running Free has a huge sing-alonga bit where Bruce goes, go, whoa, 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 and everyone goes, whoa, 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 while they, wave their, shout, raise their fist and yell in the crowd of Long Beach Arena. But that was edited out in order to fit it onto the CD. I really should get the double CD version of this. The problem is I don't care. I know it well enough. I know every bloody line of the album because I listened to it so many times as an LP. And obviously the VHS had a slightly different running order as well because it added the encore of Sanctuary, which was only available on the B-side of the lead single from the live album, Running Free. So Running Free backed with Sanctuary. So in order to get the whole of the Long Beach set, you need this and you need that. Or perhaps you actually, instead of that, you need this CD single here, which features on the B-side of it, Running Free, Sanctuary and Murders in the Rue Morgue. Another song originally sung by Paul Di'Anno. Live After Death is one of the greatest live albums of all time. And when I listened to it, I was like, I want to be in that room. I want to be there watching that band on that night. Whether you like Iron Maiden or not, and if you don't, why the hell are you 26 minutes into this? I do. I love them. They're ridiculous. They're stupid. They're pompous. They are by no means, the best band on the planet, but I love them to bits. They're like the action movie. They're the Die Hard of metal, in my opinion. Metallica are more like the Lethal Weapon, and Slayer are more like the Cannibal Ferox of metal. But Iron Maiden were just it just seemed like a cross between rock and pantomime at the same time. All that spandex, all those stupid clothes. I mean, look at that. What a ridiculous, stupid stage design that is. A huge mummified character that has eyes that catch fire. Sure, it's pantomime. It's the type of stuff that now you have Take That doing, or Taylor Swift doing something similar to that, and it's incredible. That was all kind of driven from the kind of like, girls, kind of weird, kind of adolescent fantasy world where what really exists is there's nothing about relationships or personalities. It's all things that you're interested in, the comics that you've read, the films that you've watched about Egypt, science fiction, and fighting and war. So Iron Maiden are possibly the oldest adolescents on the planet, apart from some of their fans. But I think they're great. But I'm not going to be able to convince any of you that they're in any way cool, because they're not, and they never have been. And that's part of the appeal, I think. The VHS of Live After Death was recorded over one show, has a different track running order. And this is the DVD edition that came out in 2008, I think. On the second DVD, we have a number of extra bonus features in the days when they did physical releases, and they did bonus features, by the way. And those include the history of Iron Maiden, a documentary, the 57-minute documentary called Behind the Iron Curtain, which is Iron Maiden performing behind the Iron Curtain in places like Warsaw and Wrocław and Gdansk and other places, although Gdansk may have a different name under communist rule. 50 minutes of the band playing live Rock in Rio in January 1985, Hello Texas, and some promotional clips for Aces High, and 2 Minutes to Midnight. Again, it's all preposterous. Looking at it through the lens of being an adult, I just go, this is ridiculous, but it's ridiculously good fun. And that in itself is part of the appeal. Because if music isn't fun, why the hell are you listening to it? Joy Division are fantastic, but they are depressing. And that's somebody that has spent a lot of money on Joy Division over the years. The first or second single, the other single from the album, the live album, was Run to the Hills. And this features Run to the Hills, recorded live at Long Beach Arena, and Phantom of the Opera, and Lost for Words, Big Horror. Which means that if you have... I can't remember where I've stuck it now. If you've got the 10 years CD single of Run to the Hills, you have got Phantom of the Opera from Hammersmith, you have got Lost for Words, you have got Murders in the Rue Morgue, and you have got Sanctuary. So there's a total of 7 bonus tracks that were released that weren't on the live album. Practically a live album in itself. Maybe I should put together a sequence where all of those tracks exist together. I don't know. I don't particularly care, because every Iron Maiden, every Iron Maiden gig is nothing but B-sides now, because every Iron Maiden song has been released as a B-side, even some songs that probably never existed. But almost every Iron Maiden B-side was a live track, certainly in the last few years of the band's existence. That's quite bitchy. I need to think more carefully about what I'm saying sometimes. This is a relatively short NOTCAST, on the grounds that, much as I love Iron Maiden, there's only so much that I can say about war, death, war, science fiction. What I can do, and I'm going to bring this out again, and those of you that have seen this before are probably going, when are you going to mention the swarm scale for Iron Maiden? Well, here we go, ladies and jelly spoons. The swarm scale. And the swarm scale is something that I've built on the lyrics of each one of the albums to talk about how the band lyrically have put together the components of the songs. This is the swarm scale for Powerslave. And you'll see each song is ranked upon swarm, so swords and sorcery and ghosts, W, which is war and history, A, which is armaments and violence, R, which is religion, and M, your good old-fashioned misogyny. And this album scores a staggering 102 there, which is by no means the worst offender in the band's catalogue. In fact, it's pretty well behaved, with a per-song average of 12.75%. Unsurprisingly, the cover versions score very low on that. So King of Twilight and Rainbow's Gold scores 2 there on its misogyny, and it doesn't score anything. And of course, by the way, this is ranked out of 6, because everything's ranked out of 6 when it comes to Iron Maiden. 6, 6, 6. So your maximum score that you can get there is 30. The worst offender that we have on the album is, let me just quickly check, it is Powerslave. A song which has a high score about sorcery and ghosts because it leans towards immortality and conquering death. It has a 4 for war and history. It has a 4 for armaments and violence. It has a 4 for religion and a 2 for a misogyny, I believe. Oh no, that's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I was talking complete nonsense. Powerslave is 6 for sorcery and ghosts, 6 for war and history, 4 for armaments and violence. Its religious is 6 and its misogyny is 2. By the way, so those are how we go. So obviously the big offenders on war and history are Aces High and 2 Minutes to Midnight. Unsurprisingly, songs about war. Possibly the perfect Iron Maiden song on the planet is actually a song about a ghost warrior that conquers death, kills gods, and shows a shocking degree of misogyny with a side order of possibly sexual violence, rape, and casual sexism, treating women as objects to be disposed of and thrown away. So, obviously there's an Iron Maiden song about that, probably. I don't know which one yet. I'm sure we'll find it. In fact, I think the highest scorer is elsewhere in the band's catalogue. And I will quickly go to my spreadsheet of dreams and try and work out which one of the songs has the highest score. It is... Oh, I think we might have already had it, actually. The song with the high score, I think we've got, at the moment, Genghis Khan scores 24 out of 30. So that's a full 6 on everything apart from misogyny. 26, actually. Transylvania, is which is old for an instrumental. And Invaders gets 24 as well. So 22 is near the top of the worst scoring songs, although there are a couple as you get further on into the band's catalogue. Hooks in You scores 24. I'm giving away some of the future answers on the grounds that it's terrible and sexist and terrible. But the worst scoring song which gets more points than is physically possible is a B-side, and we will get to that in a number of albums' time. But Powerslave is one of the worst offenders in terms of an individual song for being basically offensive and ticking all of the Iron Maiden kind of things about sorcery, ghosts, war and history, armaments, religion, and good old-fashioned misogyny, which apparently is quite popular. So, I mean, popular is maybe not the word for it, but there you are. So again, this is the score that we've got for the swarm scale for Powerslave. By the way, in case you're thinking, oh, he's woke or whatever, bullshit to that. This is coming from a place of love, because if you love something, you've got to be able also to take the piss out of it. You've got to be able to mock it. You've got to be able to see its weak points, because if you can't, then suddenly you're very insecure whatsoever. There are some people that can't live with having the piss taken out of the things that they love. Those people are boring, and as David Lynch's character said in Twin Peaks, says they have no soul in their hearts and they need to fix their souls. So Iron Maiden's Powerslave, good, bad, ugly, and very, very rock and roll. If you like bad metal from the 80s, Iron Maiden are fantastic. What an incredible opportunity you have to discover truly amazingly terrible music. The best thing to do is, if you take this stuff seriously, you really are a lost cause. You shouldn't be taking Iron Maiden seriously at all. You've got to be able to open your mouth and smile at how ridiculous this stuff is, because Iron Maiden fundamentally are ridiculous, and we know it. And by knowing it, then what you do is you're taking away some of its power and you're turning it into entertainment. This stuff is hilarious, and I'm glad that you've made it to the end of this video. And if you haven't, I can say whatever I like and it doesn't matter what I say. So there we are. I am away for a few days, not that you will notice, because you will be off living your lives doing other things. So I will end this the only way that is appropriate. I have ended one other NOTCAST like this. I am going to quote the B-side to 2 Minutes to Midnight. Some Guns recording this. See you soon. Bye.